Let me lower the game a little bit. Okay. Act 6. Drake plummets towards the ground. Buttercup screams. Bubbles watches in terror as Drake falls. Daddy! Drake drops faster and faster, 30 feet away from the ground, then 20, then 10, when Blossom cuts through the air and scoops him up. That's my bitch right there! Jojo watches from his window, furious. No, no, no! Blossom soaks up her hero moment. Sorry I'm late, Dad, but I had to make peace with an old... Drake slaps and scratches at Blossom, still possessed. Stop, stop! Ow! You're so annoying! Blossom lands on the street with Drake, his fists flying. Blossom punches him in the face. His woolly bear flies out of his ear. Blossom stomps it as Drake moans on the ground. That was surprisingly cathartic. Bubbles is stomping out all the woolly bears on the street when Blossom lands beside her. Bubbles gives her a huge hug. Blossie, you saved the day! Haven't heard that one in a while. My babies! My poor babies! Blossom and Bubbles turn to find Henrietta crouched in a puddle, mourning her woolly bears. Oops. Henrietta smiles menacingly, slowly standing up. Woolly bears, mount up! The busted woolly bears start to rise up and crawl toward Henrietta as she cackles maniacally, when suddenly Henrietta is electrocuted and flies into a building. Hard. Reveal Buttercup with a live wire behind her. The woolly bears slump, ineffectual without Henrietta's leadership. But way too much. Buttercup is worried, until Henrietta starts coughing. The girls sigh, relieved. Buttercup's eyes light up. Not dead. Buttercup and Bubbles high-five. Then they hear cheering. They turn to discover a massive crowd cheering for them. The sisters... Really? Really? The sister is soak it up? Really? Fucking grade school English? Okay. The sisters soak it up, feeling like real heroes again. In a sweeping reversal of fate, the Powerpuff Girls are beloved again in Townsville. A super bloom surrounds the Utonium home. What the fuck is a super bloom? Townsville residents swing by, leaving gifts. A huge sign is hung across the front lawn. Thank you, Powerpuff Girls. The town is pleading for the girls to return permanently, but the sisters have yet to comment. Pan from the TV to Blossom standing by the window. She admires signs outside as she listens, watches a Bitmoji. Look, I get it. It's a cool opportunity. I just love our life together. I don't want to ask you to turn it down, but I hope you do. Sorry. Doing this on Bitmoji was a stupid idea. Love you. Blossom sighs, then notices something outside. Blossom opens the front door as someone walks away. Jojo? Jojo turns, smiles shyly at Blossom. Hey, I was just leaving you guys a little token of appreciation. Buttercup looks out the window, watching them. Bubba, come here. Bubbles joins her at the window. What? Whoa! Blossom picks up Jojo's gift. It's an action figure of her, the one we saw Jojo holding in the teaser. Wow, where'd you get this? I actually bought it behind my dad's back when I was a kid. I had to hide it under the bed like porn. Why would you say that? Why would you fucking say that? Why? Why? Okay. Not because I did anything creepy with it, just because he hated you. Oh my god, this is brutal. No, yeah, I got that. I remember. I'm still so sorry, Jojo. It was an accident. Speaking of, I'm sorry about falsely accusing your dad of mass terrorism. Yeah, real egg on your face, huh? Little bit, yeah. Well, I guess we're even. I mean, we're not even. Nowhere close. I just mean, don't worry. Is she flirting? A girl? You think you guys are gonna stay? I don't know. We have to talk it out. Well, I hope you do. Jojo starts to walk away. Jojo, why don't you hate me? It's not for lack of trying. Night. Blossom watches Jojo go, oddly drawn to him. Classic hate boner. There's so much wrong here. This is beyond redemption. There's so much fucking wrong with this thing. It's insane. The sisters talk over each other at dinner, telling Drake a story. Their energy is magnetic and warm, like old times. So, Dad, I come up behind her and zap her. She flies like 20 feet and splats into a wall. All of them crack up. Drake slaps his knee. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Good thing they caught her. You know she murdered her parents? Really? Good goss. Good goss? The fuck was that? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? So, have you girls thought about whether or not you want to stay in Townsville? The girls look at each other, quiet. Blossom's about to speak when Drake cuts her off. Before you answer, I just want to say, I know you are individuals with full lives and aspirations. So if picking up your old mantle doesn't feel like your life anymore, I want you to honor that. The girls are shocked by Drake's uncharacteristic clarity. Sure we got that bug out? Sarah called me, which I know wasn't easy for her, and mentioned that I sometimes don't express to you girls that I see you as full people. I said that too! Jerry Orbach! Who the fuck is Jerry Orbach? What the fuck does that mean? You're my daughters first, and your happiness is all that matters. You and Sarah talk. You know she still has a crush on you. We'll discuss Sarah later. For now, you girls need to make a decision. If you need me, I'll be in my lab. Drake leaves. A beat. Are we really doing this? I'd be giving up my whole life. A job. A great guy that loves me. I'd be giving up Hollywood. It was my dream. I probably look pathetic to you guys, but you didn't. I'm giving up backyard chickens. And a lot of other stuff too. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it. What about you guys? They share nervous glances. Blossom, the most conflicted. Grew up in a small town, and when the rain would fall down, I'd just stare out of my window. Buttercup smiles, joining in. Dreaming of what could be, and if I'd end up happy, I would pray I could break away. They both stop singing and look to Blossom. Is she in or not? Blossom looks pained, shakes her head. Buttercup and Bubbles share a disappointed nod. A silent beat. Then, I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. I'll do what it takes till I touch the sky. It was a fake out. What a slut. What? Buttercup and Bubbles are thrilled. They join in singing in each other's faces. Visceral. A complete return to childhood. I'll make a wish, take a chance, make a change, and break away. What the fuck? I don't know what song they're talking about. Who cares? Drake hears the girls singing upstairs and smiles. He peers into a microscope, examining a defunct woolly bear robot. But he's doing more than just examining it. He's repairing it. The bot wriggles back to life and Drake smiles. He walks to a cabinet, revealing a hidden door. He opens it, walks inside. Lights flicker on as Drake places the bot in a glass cage, surrounded by other mysterious specimens. As he exits, he looks to a picture on his wall of himself, Bubbles, Buttercup, and Blossom as young girls. He looks at them, guilt-ridden. Close on the 2000s action figure of Blossom as the girls continue to scream, sing, and dance in the background. Match 2, a camera feed that Jojo watches. The action figure has a secret camera inside, a scowl on his face. His pet monkey watches the feed beside him, eating a banana. I'll find another way to win re-election. We took them out once, we can do it again. Right, Dad? The monkey screeches with fervor as we cut to black. The end. I'm glad it's over. Because holy fucking shit. You think it can't get worse, and then it gets worse. Jesus Christ. Okay, what the fuck did you give me? So we got Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles again. What else? Another one. We got 2 chapters? Chapter 4 and 5? Okay. And what's this? Yandere... Wait, what? Yandere Dev's Persona 3 fanfiction? Oh my god. You got to be joking. Wait. Is this... Okay. So chapter 2. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Oh my god. There's so much here. Holy shit. And it's not safe for work. Ooh. You're giving me so much. Holy fuck. Okay. Let me prepare for this. And I still have to finish the game? God damn it. No guarantees, but let's go. I want to see Demi-Fiend's face like this. Let him suffer. All right. This is the true demon entity. Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles by Proud Housewife. Chapter 4. Dangerous Days Ahead. Author's note. Hello, friends. I apologize for being gone for so long. One of my little ones came down with pneumonia, so of course my life has been nothing but doctor's appointments and chicken soup. And that's on top of all of the other work a mommy has to do. Wait, didn't we read this? Didn't we read this one? We did. We read this one. We did. Okay, so chapter 5. Chapter 5. Okay. Chapter 5. A New Friend. Hello, friends. I'm very sorry if this chapter is a bit shorter than usual, because just as soon as one sick little one gets better, wouldn't you know it, another one starts running a fever. Phew, a mommy's life sure is exhausting. I wasn't planning on posting another chapter until things had settled down, but the hubby says the work of the Lord doesn't wait for the whims of men. So you can all thank Ephesians 5:22-24 for the speedy update. Smiley face. Ooh, and on that note, some of you lovely readers have requested me to write down the Bible verses after each chapter. Well, far be it from me to not spread the word of the Lord. Another question I have gotten: in the original books, Harry Potter and friends frequently question authority. And how do I feel about this? Well, that is quite a toughie, you've asked me. I talked to the hubby about it, and we agreed that usually it is good to obey authority. But when authority is acting contrary to the Lord, you should talk to that authority about it. Acts 5-29. You just might see authority figures making bad decisions in this chapter. Nobody's perfect except the Lord. No, not even Dumbledore. No matter what the original books told you, and how Harry Potter handles this will be a big question in the story. Hint, it will be very different than the original books. And finally, I got a PM from a lovely friend who was a bit confused, so I'll just clear this up now. I do not own the original books, and those belong to JKR. So, without further ado... Okay, it's not too big. Harry Potter woke up drowsily in a comfy, fluffy mattress. It was only now that he had the energy to observe his surroundings. The room was small, but also everything a little boy needed. There was a big, warm fireplace in the grey stone wall across from him, a shelf of intelligent, age-appropriate books. The Holy Bible was in the centre of the shelf, of course, and there was a simple wood dresser of respectable, school-appropriate attire, and of course a clean porcelain sink for washing up and brushing teeth and such. It was only then that our hero noticed that there was another bed in the room. It was the same as his own bed, except that this other bed had not been made. Also, this bed had its own Bible in it, and it looked different from the one on the shelf. But where was this new roommate of his? Harry looked behind him to see a small, pallid young boy with shockingly bright red hair, kneeling with seeming piety as he prayed to a small statue. At this shocking sight, Harry felt a horror, but he quickly composed himself and declared bravely, "Hello, friend. My name is Harry Potter, and I take it that we are roommates. What's your name?" "Ronald Weasley," the other boy responded friendlily, and he reached out a hand to shake. "Welcome to Hogwarts. I am a Christian too." "Really?" Harry exclaimed delightedly and clasped his hands together. "This is joyous news." Ronald smiled deviously, and Harry remembered that he had just seen this boy praying to a statue, and he wondered why that would be. But he was new to this whole Christianity thing, and maybe that was okay. Still, it didn't feel quite right. He bravely resolved to bring it up with Dumbledore. That sentence makes no sense, but okay. "Would you like to come with me to breakfast?" Ronald queried politely as he got up from the statue he had been kneeling in front of. "They have delicious food here in the Great Hall." "Would I ever!" Harry cried delightedly, and he bolted out of bed and brushed his teeth and washed his face. This little one certainly had a healthy appetite. In a jiffy, Harry and his new friend had joined the stream of young lads on the steep, winding stairs heading to breakfast. They could smell the aroma of breakfast from the Great Hall, and it wafted right into their noses. Before they knew it, they were all sitting in the Great Hall. "Come sit with me and my family," Ronald offered eagerly, and he motioned frantically toward a table packed full of people with hair just as red as his. Come on, come on, come on! I can't wait for them to see that I've made a new friend." Harry followed Ronald with the obedience of one who does not have many friends in a new situation. That is such an awkward sentence. Oh, what a difficult circumstance that can be, and how many believers have been led astray by those situations. "Guys, guys, guys!" Ronald screeched joyously as he pulled Harry toward the table of his family. "This is Harry Potter, and he is my new roommate." "Hello, Harry," the Weasleys chorused in unison. "Welcome to Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles." "Hello," Harry stammered shyly. Something about this group made him nervous. "Nice to meet you." He sat down at their table. He could smell a delicious breakfast, but where was the food? No sooner had the thought crossed his mind when the Reverend Dumbledore came onto the Great Hall stage and dropped down to his knees and raised his hands skyward and screamed, "Dear Lord, please provide these devout young ones with 3 strips of bacon or links of sausage each, 2 for the ladies, a bowl of hearty oatmeal flavored with cinnamon and apple chunks, 2 poached eggs cooked all the way through, home fries seasoned with garlic, a glass each of orange juice and milk, and dishes up to the task." Harry was once again amazed to see the food appear in front of him. The food looked and smelled amazing. He suspected good old Minerva had something to do with this delicious spread. But before he dug into the food, he remembered that he had something to discuss with the Reverend. Harry fought his nervousness, and he ran after Dumbledore as he hopped dexterously off of the stage. "Excuse me," the young believer cried innocently as he ran after the Reverend as fast as his little legs could carry him. "Excuse me, Reverend." "What is it, son?" the Reverend reiterated kindly. He was dressed respectably in sturdy, manly jeans and a red, white and blue plaid shirt over which a few virile tresses were visible, and a pair of admirable brown cowboy boots. "Are you setting in all right?" "I sure am," Harry retorted graciously. "How are things with your family?" "Very well," replied Dumbledore knowledgeably, and he was impressed with this little one's manners. "Was there something you wanted to talk to me about?" "Well," Harry began uncomfortably, and he scuffed his blue-sneakered foot against the polished wood floor of the Great Hall. I woke up this morning and saw my roommate praying to a statue. Is that really an okay thing to do?" "That is a real toughie," Dumbledore answered ponderously. "Well, I don't worship idols. It is, in fact, a very unchristian thing to do. But you see, here at Hogwarts we divide ourselves up into sorting hats. After breakfast, all the new little ones will choose their hats. Each of the different hats have different beliefs, but we all love the Lord. And what more in common do you need?" That does sound true," Harry pondered sensitively. "But is it really? It seems that if we all really love the Lord, we don't need to divide ourselves. Are the divisions between the different hats really so significant as to merit dividing Christianity? What are these divisions?" "Well, they are somewhat significant," Dumbledore allowed tentatively. For instance, I am a Gryffindor hat. We believe everything in the Bible, and only the Bible. That red-headed roommate of yours is a Slytherin hat. And Slytherins worship statues? Harry queried innocently. The Reverend nodded gravely. Then how are they Christian? Harry questioned skeptically. What about Exodus 24:6? That's a 10 commandment. Well, they have different commandments, Dumbledore explained well-meaningly. They love the Lord, and that is all we need. But do they really love the Lord? Harry posited timidly. If they do, then why do they worship statues? Dark days are coming, Dumbledore replied earnestly. We need to be inclusive. If there were only Gryffindor hats at Hogwarts, then there would not be many people left. I see, Harry conceded uncertainly as he walked back to Ronald's overcrowded table. He was getting nervous about his hat business, but he supposed he didn't have to trust Dumbledore. After all, grown-ups know best, right? Blessings. Wow, she even has Bible quotes. I'm not reading the Bible quotes. Fuck them. If this is meant to teach kids, like, religious dogma divides, it's doing a very bad job of it. It's really fucking bad. Okay, what's next? Yandere Dev's Persona 3 fanfiction. This is the Persona 3 fanfiction Yandere Dev wrote. I'm not familiar with the Persona universe. This is a direct copy-paste. Okay. I don't have the rest of the summary, but fine. Chapter 1. It was selfish and dangerous and dishonorable. Minato knew that. Translator's note, Minato is the protagonist. He was putting his life, his reputation, and his role in Seas at risk. Minato knew that too. Not only had he left the dorm during the dark hour, but he had also procured his evoker from the command room when no operation was underway. These simple actions might as well have been criminal offenses in the eyes of Shuji or Mitsuru. Either warranted severe punishment, and both were adequate reason to expel them from Seas altogether. But Minato would perform yet another unforgivable, taboo act before the night was through. He would summon a persona for reasons completely unrelated to the safety of the city. If a person possesses a rare power that few others share, it is only sensible to use that power. If that person's power can be used to save the lives of many others, it is only reasonable that he uses his power whenever possible. It was practically his duty to use his power. What kind of person would he have to be to turn down his position in Seas, and leave the city's population just that much more vulnerable to the shadows? He could not refuse to protect the city, because he was one of the few who could. Whether or not he wanted to be a part of Seas was irrelevant. It was his duty by principle, his obligation by circumstance. There were times when Minato felt honored to possess this power, privileged to be a member of Seas, thrilled to know that by using his power he was saving lives. And then there were times when the strain of his duty drove him to wish that his evoker was a real firearm. The horrors he had seen in Tartarus, the pain that those abominations had inflicted upon him, and the emotional distress he was forced to invoke on himself, sometimes several times per minute, in order to evoke his personae. Each foray into the Tartarus was more traumatic than the last. No amount of injuries made the pain more bearable. No victory over a shadow ever made them any less terrifying. He saw those beasts when he slept, when he closed his eyes, when he tried to focus on the blackboard in school. How did the others expect him to maintain an ordinary life while fighting those horrendous monsters almost every night? He'd stepped into that backwards tower many times now, but every time he still felt terror grip him, still feared for his life every time a shadow drew near. He would never get used to it. It would never be normal to see one of those foul beasts. It would never be normal to hold a weapon and use it to defend his life. It would never be normal to hold something shaped like a gun, point it at his head, and pull the trigger. The evoker. Minato looked down at the device he now cradled in both hands, the device that had inflicted so much pain on his mind. He despised using it. It never got easier. since it wouldn't work if it didn't cause him sufficient mental distress. He knew it wasn't a real gun. He knew it couldn't kill him, but he still feared and hated the device. He knew that every time he used it, that horrible sensation would course throughout his body, the feeling that was terrible enough to evoke something buried deep down in his subconscious. Persona. The stress that it placed on his mind only lasted for a second, just enough to draw out the persona, but every use of the device caused him to hate it more and fear the next time he would call upon it. Ironic, then, that tonight he would use the device to bring himself pleasure. It was all too much for him. Classes, popularity, friends, exams, scheduling his time to balance them all. Every student had to deal with those things. But he had a lot more on his plate than just that. Seas, shadows, the dark hour, Tartarus, the evoker. It all placed far too much stress on his mind. Stress that was only amplified each time he pulled that despicable trigger. It affected every aspect of his life now. He couldn't do a single thing without being reminded that later on he was going to buy weapons from a cop, or go to hell at midnight, or feel pain rivaling that of a bullet through the brain countless times before the night was through. No aspect of life felt normal anymore. He couldn't take anything seriously knowing who he was, what he was capable of, and the activities that dominated his nights. He couldn't even look at girls without being reminded of social links and other seas-related things. Oh my god, this is garbage. Girls. He felt so isolated from them all. He lived with Yukari and Mitsuru, but since they were nothing more than comrades, their gender counted for nothing. The opposite sex was the only thing he ever heard anybody talking about, but no girls had ever shown any interest in him. He was the only guy in his circle of friends without experience, the only guy who hadn't been on a date, the only guy who had never been desired by a girl. Was he really that unappealing? Was he really that hopeless? Would things always be this way? If only a girl would just like him, he could feel better about himself. He would be self-confident if he knew that it was possible for a girl to like him, but he wouldn't be appealing to girls until he was self-confident. It was a catch-22. It was a feedback loop he could never escape from. That feeling of inescapable despair and loneliness was what finally pushed him to the edge and drove him to do what he'd done tonight. He wasn't even sure if it would work, but he needed comfort, relief, pleasure. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to enjoy himself, what it felt like to let go of everything and indulge in self-centered fun. That was what he was going to do tonight. He had struggled with this decision for so long, but his latest near-death experience in Tartarus had reminded him that he could die at any night now. He didn't want to spend another night alone, desperate, insecure, worrying that he'd die a virgin. If his plan worked, then he'd never have to worry about that again. Minato was surprised by the number of his personae that all had the form of a human woman. Personae had been explained to him as physical manifestations of his subconscious psyche, or some unintelligible Freudian babble like that. All he understood was that personae were parts of him that he drew out using the evoker. When he first saw his inner subconscious taking the form of women, he started to fear that he might be subconsciously homosexual. But over time, it slowly began to make sense to him. The persona were reflections of his innermost subconscious desires. Women. Minato was aware that he only felt the desire to engage in sexual behavior because it was part of every living organism's biological programming. He was aware that the compulsion he felt was nothing more than his body's way of assuring that he produced offspring, the only matter of importance to any biological organism. But sex meant more to him than that. Having sex would be a milestone in his life. It would dictate his self-respect. It would make him feel like an equal to his peers. He felt like there was a part of life he was missing out on, and he wouldn't be a complete human being until he'd experienced it. Although there are a great number of people who could provide reasoning for why one should not judge one's self-worth by such standards, Minato had dwelled on the matter far too much for his mind to be easily swayed. Sex, or rather his lack of sex, had become almost an obsession to him, frequently reinforced by the sight of all the female bodies around him. His female classmates and teachers, the attractive Yukari and Mitsuru, and the scantily clad women that emerged from his head all too often were all like juicy steaks dangled in front of a starving man. He could not have his classmates, for they showed no interest in them. He could not have Yukari nor Mitsuru, for they were out of his league, and his comrades before that. But the personae were a different story. for his personae obeyed him unquestioningly. His perception of the personae had changed over time. At first he thought of them as they were explained to him, an extension of himself, taking physical form. But over time he began to identify them as beings separate from himself. Their names appeared in his mind when he obtained them, and when appearing in the Velvet Room they spoke to him before entering his heart. The freakish, imp-like man who resided in the Velvet Room had terrified Minato at first, but over time Igor's appearance became water under the bridge once he proved to be assistive, if cryptic. His ability to fuse multiple personas had proven to be invaluable, and Minato found himself frequenting the Velvet Room more and more as his collection of personae expanded. Although Minato found himself slightly attracted to Igor's peculiar assistant, he did not imagine that anyone else in the room would be the object of his infatuation, until a routine fusion yielded the most human-looking persona he had encountered yet. "I am Lilim," she had purred in a soft, demure voice. "I will think only of your well-being." Her form was that of a human woman, with the addition of 2 bat-like wings and a long, slim tail. Aside from these extra appendages and her long, elf-like ears, she could easily have passed for an actual human woman. She was supernaturally beautiful, perfect, ideal, flawless in every way. Long, dark, wavy hair, hypnotizing eyes, and a figure that put gravure idols to shame, clothed only in a white leotard. Minato's mouth fell open, and had the persona not vanished to retreat into his heart, he might have spent all of eternity standing there, entranced by her beauty and perfection. Minato had never once been tempted to abuse or misuse his powers, but the sight of the winged vixen was the feather that broke the camel's back. Or rather, the 100-pound dumbbell that snapped the camel in two. Minato was drawing up plans to steal his evoker from the command room and escape the dorm at night before he was even out the Velvet Room's enigmatic blue door. He was not sure if this plan would work. In the past, every time he had summoned a persona, the being had only manifested temporarily before retreating back into him. He had never tried to issue a command to a persona that was not combat-related, and did not expect a self-respecting entity to obey his selfish whims. However, he was desperate enough to give it a try. Minato looked down the barrel of his evoker, nervous, shaking, sweating. Was this the way he wanted to lose his virginity? He didn't care. From the looks of things, no girls were ever going to be interested in him anyway. He'd have to take whatever he could get, and he certainly wouldn't mind his first experience coming from a jaw-dropping babe like Lilim either. Of course, all of these thoughts were moot if Lilim would not agree to his requests. Then again, all personae so far had obeyed him without hesitation, and none had shown the capacity for disloyalty. He was confident that his plan would work. She was a part of him. How could she refuse him? Wait, if she was a part of him, would this be like having sex with himself? An advanced form of masturbation? He shook the thoughts from his head. As long as his hands were on that beautiful body, he didn't care about the details. He didn't have time to mull over it at all. The dark hour was already half over, since it had taken him some time to procure his evoker, escape from the dorm, and arrive at the Love Hotel where he now sat upon a large circular bed. This was the spot he had chosen to carry out this experiment. He could think of no place that was more fitting. He pressed the evoker to his head, closed his eyes, and prepared for the familiar pain. I don't want to continue this. There's so much projection in this, and there is so much cringe here, especially because I know who Yandere Dev is. Like, this is really fucking bad. This is really fucking bad. Okay, Jesus Christ, this is pretty fucking big too. Okay, alright. This better be the final one. Did you post something else? Oh my god, there's more. Dude. Christ. Alright. That was new for you? I guess chapter 2 is more hot. Okay, let's see. Author's note. I wrote this without playing a single Yakuza or Resident Evil game. I hope that watching a few of the Resident Evil movies by Paul Thomas Anderson counts as sufficient research. Kiryu and the Knight of the Redfield lineage. One night in Kamurocho in the year 20XX, Kiryu Kazuma was hanging out in the club Vincent with his good buddy Goro Majima, having drinks at the bar and playing pool. "Hey Kiryu-chan," Majima suddenly piped up before his turn with the billiards. "I'm hungry." "Nani?" "I said, Kiryu-chan, I'm hungry." "Me, Majima, me, hunger for food." "So go to the bar and get some. Why are you asking me?" Kiryu asked, his face blank. "Nah, bar food's too pricey. The booze is bloating my tab enough as it is already. Why don't you mosey over to Smile Burger and get me the King Smile with fries?" Majima smacked his lips, patted his bare belly in anticipation. Kiryu paused and thought, "Can't you go yourself, Majima?" "Nah, it's my turn next and the anticipation is killing me as is. I can't hold a gotta pokey poke no more." "Why are you making me get Smile Burger if you're not even paying for your food? Can't you just ask me to buy you something at the bar?" Kiryu shook his head. "Well, now that I thought about burgers, anything else is just going to disappoint me and make me wonder what might have been. Just saying the word burger is making me more peckish. Make mine a double now." "You're just using this as an excuse to cheat the score, aren't you?" Kiryu accused, and a quick glance at the scoreboard for the game of pool showed that the former Yakuza was indeed in the business of eclipses with his score. Majima almost froze up at Kiryu's unusual, uncharacteristic perceptiveness, but the mad dog was no stranger to wiggling out of a tight jam. Totally not. Now, you gonna get me my burger, or am I gonna have to skin you for some homemade mad dog patties?" Majima threatened. "Either way, I'm gonna eat like a damn emperor." Kiryu sighed. Majima always seemed to set these things up so Kiryu would end up indulging his silly desires in some way. But the last thing he wanted right now, even less than playing food delivery boy, was to indulge Majima's bizarre fascination with engaging him in bouts of physical contest. "Fine, I'll get you your food." "I knew you had it in you, Kiryu-chan. Now, chop chop, make it snappy like that queer blue porcupine on the Nintendos." Majima motioned as Kiryu walked to the door. As soon as Kiryu was gone, Majima looked around to scope out the rest of Vincent. "None of you saw anything. Swear on this." Majima shouted to the employees and the other patrons as he reached into his pockets and started showering money all about. The bribe was a success, and soon everyone was too preoccupied with collecting the cash to pay much heed to the one-eyed mad dog. As such, Majima tossed his pool cue aside and crab-walked over the people to the scoreboard. Humming a hip-hop song as he worked, Majima commenced a few numerical adjustments. It was no trouble navigating a route to the nearest Smile Burger. Kiryu had known the bustling district of Kamurocho all his life, the neon-soaked streets as familiar to him as his own reflection in the mirror. Kamurocho was not the safest part of Tokyo, but two-bit street gangs and low-level Yakuza were of little concern to the Dragon of Dojima. But still, even as he walked through the crowds, Kiryu felt the almost subliminal yet continually building feeling of dread. He did not fear being robbed or attacked, but regardless, the oddest occurrences always seemed to coalesce with his vicinity whenever he was in a neighborhood. It never seemed he could even round a corner without being pulled into some stranger's sordid affair. And not just in Tokyo either, for that matter. No matter where he went in the world, Kiryu seemed to encounter this particular phenomenon. Just what was it about him that drew Kiryu towards the lives and troubles of others as some transformative, mediative factor? And for that matter, why did he keep agreeing to help, no matter how ridiculous his encounters got? Oh, the things Kiryu had seen and done. Decades of strange memories accumulated. Memories that had stayed with him even longer than even some of the work he had in his time as a Yakuza. Memories that could fill an entire factory's worth of postcards. That feeling of tense anticipation continued to build as Kiryu neared the Smile Burger. Right on cue, from the street opposite to the burger joint, Kiryu spotted an all-too-familiar sight in the streets of Kamurocho. A lone woman, surrounded and menaced by a gang of ne'er-do-well thugs. Kiryu shook his head. He had been beating up these kinds of lowlifes for years. He thought all the would-be gangs of muggers and rapists would have caught on by now. Nevertheless, duty called. He was Kiryu Kazuma, and these were the sort of pressing matters that he was obligated to resolve. As Kiryu crossed the street, he noticed that the scene was off. Instead of the usual Japanese woman, the imperial lady was a foreigner. And make that plural, it was two ladies. Two Caucasian women of average height with slim builds. Brunette, both of them. The one on the left wore a red leather jacket and slim blue jean, her hair tied back in a medium-length ponytail. The one on the left was less conservatively dressed, in a blue tube top that left her shoulders exposed, and a black miniskirt that left a lot of leg to show. Whatever leg of hers wasn't covered up by those knee-high brown boots. The latter's wardrobe baffled Kiryu, for these Kamurocho nights could get chilly. Gaijin, who was to know what was going through their minds? Perhaps the water overseas did things to them. Hey, honey bunnies, you lost? The leader goon, barely a grade above nondescript in his appearance, asked the two foreign women. Why don't you grab a bite with us? The biggest, burliest of the goons proposed. As he cracked his knuckles, he continued, I never had me some Western cuisine. Kiryu sighed as he got ready to interject. As usual, he expected the usual huffing and puffing from the scum before Kiryu reiterated his threat, followed by the usual few minutes of carnage that always ended badly for them. But right before Kiryu opened his mouth, the unexpected happened. You hungry? The woman in red asked. She spoke in English, her voice sounding like the loud-mouthed American movie heroes Kiryu sometimes saw on the TV's movie channel. And how about a knuckle sandwich, topped with peanut butter? She drove her knee into the burly goon's crotch. As he howled in pain, she grabbed him by his hair and held his head down as she punched him in the mouth over and over. While she worked the big guy over, her friend, the woman in the blue top, was on the rest of the thugs like a vengeful spirit. Kiryu watched, totally astonished, as she took them all down in quick but painful succession. Whoever the woman in blue was, she definitely had some training. Here, have a Jill sandwich, the woman in blue spoke, in Japanese, to the leader goon who she had flipped and ensnared with her legs wrapped around his neck. Presumably named Jill, she then tightened her legs to choke him for a bit before snapping the leader goon's neck. Uh-oh, I better not have stumbled into some CIA business again, Kiryu thought to himself, as he watched the burly goon let loose a flow of blooded teeth, probably his entire set, tumble out of his mouth. The woman in red slammed his face on bloody pile on the ground and then stomped on his head for good measure. The woman in red dusted herself off before Jill tapped her on the shoulder. Jill pointed directly at Kiryu, who was just standing there awkwardly and staring ever since they had stolen his thunder from him. For a while, the women and Kiryu were just staring at each other. They stared at him, very suspicious. They probably thought he was another Japanese man with devious intentions, Kiryu guessed. Kiryu didn't meet foreigners very often. When he did, it was usually for the aim of beating them up in an underground fighting arena, and Kiryu wasn't sure if the same etiquette applied, or should be applied, to random white women in the street. Hello? Kiryu finally broke the odd tension. A polite greeting usually was the right etiquette when meeting strangers. Surely that had to translate even across borders and oceans? Got something on your mind, pal? Don't try any funny business. I bet you got a good idea what we can do. Jill warned him, her tone decidedly hostile in spite of Kiryu's attempt at friendliness. Nothing of the sort. You know, your Japanese seems pretty good, so I hope what I say next is understandable. Kiryu decided to try and explain. The line of work we're in requires some international understandings. Jill then motioned for him to get on with it. I thought you two were in trouble and I decided to intervene, but it seems you can take care of yourself. Oh, I guess we can. Claire piped in, looking at the moaning wreckage that had once been the mobile forms of their attempted violators. Well, the thought's what counts. Not many in this world can care enough to help a stranger in need. Jill mumbled some appreciation. Come on, Claire, let's get out of here. Not so fast, Jill. Claire looked Kiryu over as she spoke to Claire in English, almost like a starving beggar lusting for food behind a restaurant front window. For a guy his age, he sure is pretty lean and muscular, and he clearly can't handle himself, and he knows like he knows his way around here. Way better than we can. I wish I could understand English. What are they saying? Kiryu thought. Whatever. My time is fleeting and my work here is done. Now, why was I out here again? Kiryu tried to remember what had brought him out on the streets of Kamurocho to begin with. It had something to do with Majima's lunatic demands, and that much he could recall. Still deep in thought, he was shocked when Jill tapped him on the shoulder. What the? Kiryu spun around, breaking into a defensive pose on instinct. He managed to calm and control his motions when he saw that it was just the woman, but already his arm had been raised and ready for action. Oh, don't be so quick on the draw there, cowboy, Jill reprimanded him as she took a step back. I just wanted to ask if you'd be interested in helping us a bit more. Help you? What could you possibly need me to help you with? If you're lost, I can just escort you to the nearest tourist agency. Kiryu shrugged. No, this is the kind of job that requires a specialist. And you look pretty special, big boy. Claire chimed in as she slapped one of Kiryu's biceps in jest. Kiryu winced at the impact that sent a wave of pain coursing through him as she did. It wasn't pain on the level of, say, a bullet in the ribs, but it still smarted a fair bit. These women were definitely a lot stronger than they looked, and Kiryu dreaded to imagine what they must have gone through to hone themselves to such a degree. I don't think I like where this is going, Kiryu thought, before he spoke, almost shouting. You won't require me to take my clothes off, will you? What? Was Claire could muster in reply. No, though. Jill looked Kiryu over, licking her top lip. Not that it wouldn't be unhelpful. Claire glared at her companion, exasperated. But seriously, mister, all we need for you to do is... Before Jill could finish, she was suddenly cut off by the sound of someone leaping off the rooftops above them and landing right in between the women and Kiryu. Someone big, someone strong, was all Kiryu could make out as a cloud of dust exploded before him. Kiryu coughed, and as his eyes managed to clear and the dust cloud dissipated, Kiryu saw standing before him a tall, dark-haired white man dressed like he was going for a safari in a war zone, in a crater that had once been the flat ground before him. The most muscular white man he had ever seen. His muscles must have been constantly threatening to explode through his body armor, with how tightly clung even the bulky gear was. The man then stomped up to Kiryu, every step of it shaking the earth like Godzilla. Hey, buddy, I saw you gawking at my little sis from up there. You want to take the little red Clairvette for a ride, huh? The man was up in his face, hurling words in English that Kiryu had no understanding of. Nani? I'll take that as a yes. Well, too bad. You can't fuck her, but you can fuck off. Without warning, the white man sucker-punched Kiryu with an uppercut. Kiryu's eyes widened in both pain and surprise as he found himself flying into the air and down again. This was the strongest, most painful punch he had ever taken. This white man, whoever he was, had strength on a whole other level. The man was then on him, not giving him a chance to recover as he drove more powerful fists and kicks into Kiryu all over. You can't even fight back! What kind of man are you? I know what! Not a man for her! So this is what it felt like, Kiryu thought with some irony on his mind, as he reflected on the countless unremarkable goons he'd done the same to. Your inferior genes are no worthy match for the Redfield lineage! The man grabbed Kiryu by his legs and slammed him into a wall. As he dropped Kiryu, the man then ran to the streets outside. He picked a taxicab with its screaming cabbie still inside, off from the ground, and then stormed back to where Kiryu was, catching his breath and trying to struggle up. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as a Redfield, you pathetic weakling! The man lifted the taxicab above his head, ready to slam it down on Kiryu. What the hell is happening, Kiryu wondered. And he then remembered why he was out there to begin with and thought, geez, what a stupid reason to die. I hope I come back as a ghost, just so I can haunt you forever, Majima. Chris, stop! Jill and Claire ran in front of the man, presumably Chris as they were calling him. This man is our friend. What? Chris stopped in his tracks, looked at Kiryu, then at the women, then at Kiryu again. Fine. Chris crumbled the taxi he was holding into a tiny ball like it was nothing, with the driver still inside, like it was nothing. Kiryu marveled, horrified, as he witnessed this improbable feat of strength. Just who the hell was this mysterious foreign man? Chris turned to Claire. I thought I told you ladies to stay in the hotel room while I took care of Leon. More English. More words that Kiryu couldn't understand a lick of. These are mean streets, you know. I got lost, you got lost, and it took hours until I found you. What if something had happened to you in those hours, Claire? Then I would have been the last of the Redfield lineage, in a world where there exists no worthy woman for me. Your every reckless act endangers our bloodline. For some reason, Kiryu noticed that last sentence he had said made the woman named Jill roll her eyes. I can protect myself, big bro, and we were about to get this kind mister to help us before you butted in like some crazed gorilla. Claire turned to Kiryu as he managed to finally get back on his feet, but damn was he still winded. She then spoke to him in Japanese. Hey, mister, are you okay? And, what's your name? Kiryu Kazuma. Kiryu reached into his pocket, fumbled around until he found it. And don't worry, I'll be fine. Kiryu pulled out an energy drink bottle, a bottle of stamina and spark. He drank it, and though Chris had shattered his bones and caused bleeding both external and internal, the liquid coursed through his veins like a rejuvenating rapid river. Once he finished the drink, it was like he'd never been injured to begin with. "Damn it, Claire, why are you speaking Japanese?" Chris shouted at his sister. "'Cause we're in Japan, we kinda need to speak it to communicate," Claire shrugged. "That is irrelevant! You are a Redfield, Claire. You were not born speaking Japanese. You were born speaking American. All other languages are unworthy of the Redfield tongue. Let Jill do all the talking, for she is not a Redfield, and dishonors not her lineage by speaking it," Chris ordered. As such, Jill translated for the two as Chris began to order Kiryu around. "I'm Redfield. Chris Redfield. My little sister and my very good friend Jill vouch for you, but I still don't like the look of you. If you're really a friend of the Redfield lineage, you're gonna prove it." Chris reached into his pocket and pulled out a Polaroid photograph. He shoved it directly into Kiryu's chest. The photograph fell onto the ground, and Kiryu bent to pick it up. It had fallen face down, and Kiryu flipped it over to see what was on the photograph. Another foreigner, a blond man, much slimmer than Chris, with a lean and muscular build, closer in tune with Kiryu's. "I need you to find this man. His name is Leon S. Kennedy. I have it on good intel that he's been hiding out in Kamurocho. It is imperative for the future of the world that you find him for me," Chris demanded. "I don't kill if that's what you're asking, and I won't bring him back to you just so you can kill him," Kiryu shook his head. "Don't be such a pussy worrywart. The only thing you'll be killing is his virginity." "Nani?" Kiryu tried to process what he just heard. Virginity? Killing virginity? Oh no, had he stumbled into some crazy pervert drama again? "Why you gawking, huh? I gave you an order. You don't need to know any more than that, lackey. Now get out. You will find no Kennedys just standing around," Chris barked. What if I say no? I got things to do before Kiryu could finish. Chris was up on him like greased lightning, real up close. Kiryu felt an iron vice-like grip around his throat before he even realized Chris was lifting him up and squeezing. "Don't kill him, Chris!" Claire yelled. "I must, Claire, I must. For he knows, and if he knows, he may try to warn Leon for a quick buck like the dirty flip-flopping stoolie he is," Chris argued before turning his attention back to Kiryu. "Say no and I'll give you a message you can pass along to my old buddy Wesker. In hell," Chris warned him in a guttural growl while Jill continued translating. "The Redfield lineage must be protected, and I will not let anyone stand in the way of my mission." Kiryu knew that as much as he wished to avoid spending another moment with these insane foreigners, he knew he wanted to die even less. There were people who depended on him, like Haruka. There wasn't anything he wouldn't do for her, and Kiryu guessed this would have to be another example. "Fine, I'll help," Kiryu choked out, and upon hearing Jill's translation, Chris dropped him. As Kiryu stumbled up, Chris clapped Jill on the back without any hint of gentleness. "Jill, my oldest and dearest very good friend, I'm gonna need you to keep an eye on him. Make sure he don't slack off or pull no runners. Mankind needs the Redfield lineage more than air or water. It must be preserved at all costs." "Yes, sir," Jill sighed as Chris started poking her to accentuate his points. With his eyes up there, he wasn't looking where he was poking. He'd have noticed that his fingers were landing on her breasts, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Chris, you're..." Claire tapped her brother on the shoulder, deciding it was probably best to alert him to what he was doing. Jill seemed to be in a trance from what was happening. "Quiet, Claire. You may be my sister, and Jill may be my very good friend, my very goodest, but I am the man here. Not just any man. I am a Redfield man. I am authority. You listen to me." Every poke just seemed to fill her eyes with more longing for something she could never have. But to Chris, he might as well have been an empty water bottle. Kiryu sighed, shook his head, and walked off into the night in search of this Leon S. Kennedy. With her task in mind, Jill followed as Chris poked her one last time. Chris finally realized what he had been touching as Jill backed away from him, and unlike most men who got to touch Jill Valentine's breasts for like a whole 2 minutes, Chris Redfield looked like he was about to throw up and then sterilize his hands with cleansing fire for good measure. It was the last thing Kiryu wanted, an association with whatever this twisted Redfield lineage was. All the years of fighting Yakuza, of being dragged into bizarre situations just by walking down the street, and already these warped foreigners were skyrocketing to the top of the list of the worst he had ever been through. It wasn't like he had plans tonight either. He'd promised Haruka he'd go do karaoke with her after his business with Majima concluded, but now that looks like it was going to have to wait. Haruka was going to be disappointed, perhaps even saddened, and that wasn't good. Kiryu had tasted the Redfield strength, a strength that reminded him of some of his deadliest enemies over the years, and Kiryu wasn't keen on being on the receiving end of Redfield's power again so quickly. But even so, he wondered if he might just be able to pay back that American lunatic for making him stand up Haruka. Yeah, that sure would be something. Then Kiryu, while relishing in the thought of kicking that guy Jin's ass, remembered what a single Redfield punch felt like. Kiryu sighed. Fantasizing was easy. Doing it for real was going to be a whole other story. It was going to be one long night. But little did Kiryu, and all other persona dramatis involved in this sordid tale of Yakuza and biohazards, know just how long to be continued. I guess they are. Yeah, PS4 is trying to shut itself off, I noticed. Yeah. Okay. Holy shit, this goes on for like 7 fucking chapters. That's insane. How big is this shit? Jesus. Okay. Last one for the night. Jesus Christ, it's almost 1 a.m. Fucking hell. Okay. Hold me, don't hold me. Okay. Ethan buys a property in Romania and spends a few weeks renovating it. Chris Redfield lends him a hand. Set prior to the events of Resident Evil Village, without actually knowing what those events are. What the fuck? Title from the song Celestica by Crystal Castles. When it's cold outside, hold me, don't hold me. When I choose to rest my eyes, coax me, don't coax me. I am so excited to present this fic. I hope it doesn't fall flat. This pairing, the first in the tag I believe, is really important to me as I've been thinking about it for a while considering their dynamic. In this setting, Chris has a good relationship with the Winters post-Baker Ranch and considers Ethan a close friend. Ethan and Mia's child is called Evelyn because I think that's cool. I chose Romania because they're confirmed to be in Europe, and I think there was some kind of leak where the in-game currency had the same name as Romanian currency. I don't know. Go easy on me if the game comes out and everything I've predicted is hilariously inaccurate. To anyone who thinks, this would never happen, straight guys don't do this shit, trust me, you'd be surprised. Your comments would mean the world to me. I kinda already hate it, but sure. Let's see. Ethan's world gets smaller and smaller until everything is contained on a remote, foreign mountaintop. Friends are left behind. Family is cut off, and he trades office workspace for the cobwebbed, bare-beamed interior of their new home. For 2 months straight, he spends the daylight hours renovating the ramshackle lodge into something he'd be happy to shelter his wife and daughter in. It's only the first week that he's alone. The blizzard hits that morning and howls away through the day. Ethan makes himself a cup of cocoa and sits, freezing cold, wrapped up in blankets on a moth-eaten mattress. The hammering at the door could almost be the wind, which is why it takes him a while to realize it's another human being. Not bothering to discard the blanket he's using as a shawl, he sets down his mug and tentatively pulls the door open. Standing there is the last person he'd expect to see in this corner of the earth. He forgets his manners and kind of stares, squinting against the snow glare. Is that a TV? I've been standing out in the cold for at least 15 minutes, Chris says, gentle and pointed at the same time. Sorry, Ethan mutters. I thought it was the wind. His teeth clack together and he shivers, pulling the blanket closer around himself. Come in. What are you doing here? He sounds nervous even to his own ears, still unable to kick that trauma response. Chris steps inside, and the room becomes noticeably more quiet when the door seals out the screaming gale. He's appropriately dressed in winter gear, but sensibly doesn't comment on Ethan's bright, knitted attire. He puts the television set on the floor. Everything's fine, Chris tells him, before he gets into any further explanation. Ethan is deeply grateful, despite mildly humiliated that Chris recognizes the need to reassure him. I was talking to Mia, and she said you could probably use some help down here. She wants you to get it done as soon as possible so you guys can be together again, Chris explains. So you came all the way to Europe? Ethan raises his eyebrows. Chris grins in lieu of an answer. Do you want a drink? That'd be great. I was in the area, actually. Really? Ethan deadpans. You'd be surprised, Chris shrugs. He takes the proffered cocoa and takes a sip. God, that's good. It's fucking freezing out here. You didn't want to pick anywhere a little warmer? The further away from civilization, the better, Ethan says. It sounds grim, and he regrets the pessimistic tone immediately. He picks his cocoa back up and uses it to warm his hands. So, did you want to stay here? I don't have another mattress. Chris barks out a laugh, and then Ethan watches him warily. I'm used to worse. We'll work something out. Oh, in the Air Force? Not even that, Chris smiles wryly. Claire and me didn't have it easy growing up. Ethan knows that Chris has a sister, and that they're very close. He realizes he knows little else about Chris's home life, although he doesn't think he has any family or children. It's strange that Chris has become part of Ethan's family, hovering on the sidelines, always checking in and lightening the atmosphere when the winters become too absorbed in the past. It was Chris who suggested the name of their baby. At the time, he was joking. He never expected Mia to latch onto the opportunity to rewire their negative response to the name. He often found ways to make their lives easier. Small things, recommendations. It became clear that Chris had a long history with living nightmares, and his golden advice was stemming from personal experience. They work well together in the lodge. Ethan's hands aren't as good as they used to be, and Chris knows what he's doing, has a decent DIY portfolio. Together it takes them half the time it would take for Ethan to complete a task on his own, although he would have gotten it done. He's glad for the TV. He hadn't had time to set one up or settle down to watch it. He's never missed a World Series before, not when the Dodgers were playing. Chris likes baseball too, and in the early days, that was something that brought them together. Some normality after the horrors they'd seen. On the night of Game 5, Chris has stayed here for 4 days. Ethan's been here for almost 2 weeks. He gets a couple of beers from the fridge because he might not have a TV, but he wouldn't stay anywhere without access to drink. Sometimes he needs it. The TV is small and they perch it on a folding chair. Ethan sits on his bed, and Chris takes the other rickety chair. Mia let you watch this? Yeah, Ethan laughs. That's non-negotiable. See, Claire likes it too, so it's not an issue with her. So you still don't have a girlfriend? Chris takes a sip of his beer. I'm gay, he says. I'm dying. I'm dying. It was two things. It was two things. The way he just says it bluntly, I'm gay. And in my mind, as I read it, in my mind, I have that meme, I have that guy from the YouTube thing, like, I'm gay. Fuck me. Oh shit, Filthy Frank, yeah. Okay. Give me a sec. Ethan takes his eyes off the screen to blink at him. Chris is still watching the game, but there's a muscle jumping in his jaw. Ethan is half waiting for him to say, just kidding, man, but the silence stretches on into awkwardness. Chris Redfield is pretty much the opposite of the image Ethan's mind conjures up in response to the word gay. That puts paid to the idea that you can always tell. What the fuck? It's almost funny, but it also feels like the key to a really important part of Chris's personality that Ethan's been oblivious to this entire time. He should probably feel uncomfortable, but he doesn't? Maybe it's the alcohol. It's not that he'd flip out, but he might become acutely aware of the fact that he's spending his holidays alone in a cabin with his gay best friend instead of his wife and kid. That's bound to speak volumes. I should go, Chris murmurs, shifting away. Don't be ridiculous, Ethan says automatically. Chris pauses. It's not a problem. It isn't. It's just going to take some getting used to. And now Ethan isn't paying attention to the World Series. He's thinking about the way Chris vehemently refuses to share his mattress, and how he's never so much as put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Chris downs the rest of his beer. You're, he swallows, the third person in the world to know that. Yeah? Ethan's surprised. I didn't mean to say anything, but he gestures to the bottle of lager which has fallen over on the floorboards. It's okay. Let's just finish the game. Fortunately enough, the strange atmosphere dissipates quickly. Ethan swears so loud that the folks in the village a mile off could probably hear it, and Chris starts laughing as if it's funny. Shut up! The Yankees got their asses kicked by these bastards weeks ago, Ethan points out. Chris keeps laughing. Ethan gets so pissed off he turns the game off before it's over. You can't win them all, Chris says, visibly holding back laughter. Yeah, I'm going to bed. Baseball fucking sucks. Come on, man, have another drink. Don't be a downer. Ethan shakes his head. Honestly, I feel pretty tired. Kind of have a headache too. I'll grab you some painkillers. I left some in the car. Ethan wants to tell him not to worry, but Chris is already out of the door. He suddenly realizes he's shivering, reminding him to get to work on the central heating tomorrow. The thermostat isn't working, but it reads below 0. The fire only does so much, but he goes and pushes the mattress farther toward it anyway. It's hard to believe that in a few weeks he'll be moving his family in here, proud of his and Chris's hard work. The door reopens, and with it, a howling draft. Sprinkles of snow gather on the threshold before melting under Chris's boots. The wind is shut out, but the cold remains. Ethan's eyes finds Chris's, with a glint of determination. I know I asked you before, he says quietly, but we can share. I don't want you to be cold. Chris doesn't respond for a moment. He tosses the pack of Tylenol for Ethan to catch, who pops a couple dry, grinding the chalky pills under his teeth. Yeah, well, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, Chris says eventually. You won't. Come here, please. Ethan sees something flit across Chris's face that he doesn't believe he should have been privy to. It was uncontrollable, a surge of gratitude and affection. Chris masks it, but it's too late. When he awkwardly positions himself alongside Ethan on the double mattress, he's painstakingly meticulous that they aren't touching each other in any way. Ethan is rational enough to know that this goes further than base instinct, but it's true that heat-seeking behavior doesn't factor in gender or morality. He turns to lay on his back and blankly tells the ceiling, We'll never warm up if you stay so far away from me. Chris's willpower seems to dissipate, and he takes it as a challenge, moving closer and putting a hand on Ethan's waist. With no objection, he shifts to spoon up against him. All right, Chris grunts, and Ethan can feel his embarrassment through the tension in his muscles. He doesn't know he's supposed to turn around and say he hasn't actually been held for years, and it feels so good it's short-circuiting his brain. Yeah, he whispers, more hoarsely than intended. Impulsively, he covers Chris's hands with his own. They're so much bigger and rougher than Mia's, unmistakably male with their corded veins and dark hair. It feels like cheating, and he hates himself for being a cheater and showing zero fucking signs his entire life of being attracted to men until Chris hooked an arm around his waist and murmured, You're really tense, into the crook of his neck. His teeth chatter and Chris pulls him closer. Ethan swallows, his mouth dry as sandpaper. Tell me to go back to the floor and I will, comes the promise whispered right against his skin. And if he didn't have goose flesh from the cold, he would have it from the buzz of that intimacy. Don't. He almost sighs it, afraid to shatter the moment, greedy to make the most of it. Chris exhales. His arms bracket closer around Ethan's middle, pressing them close so their body heat seeps into each other. It's okay. It's just cold. One of his hands goes to scratch through Ethan's hair like soothing a wild animal. You still got that headache? No, Ethan whispers. He doesn't move, and Chris doesn't stop playing with his hair, as if he's a girl or a child. But he does nothing to stop it, because he's been starved of this all-encompassing kind of touch for too long. He doesn't remember saying anything else or falling asleep. When he wakes up, he feels a strange and overwhelming sense of loss. He blinks back to sleep, sitting up covered in blankets to see Chris watching him from a distance, looking pale. Ethan rubs his eyes. His headache is gone, but he still feels shitty. Morning, he rasps, just for something to say. Chris doesn't reply. He gets up and boils the kettle, preparing coffee for them both. As Ethan's tentatively sipping it, Chris says, Do you remember anything about last night? Ethan's gaze snaps up to his, feeling defensive. It's not as if they had sex. Yeah, he says, flippantly. So? Chris seems to relax a little. Nothing, I just thought you would wake up sober and regret it. Thought you would hate me for doing gay stuff to you, like playing with your hair. I get it, Ethan mutters. It's fine. I prefer not to be alone, he admits. So you came here alone? There's a mocking edge to it, just Chris's sense of humor. I had to figure some things out, Ethan says. Things at home haven't been easy. It makes him feel a pang of guilt that he never spent time in someone's arms other than Mia's. He misses her, and he also thrives without her, in the same way she fares better when he isn't around. They love each other deeply, but the past year or so he has been living in an echo chamber of trauma and twisted thinking, which they put aside for the illusion of contentment they project onto their daughter. Did you ever have someone? Ethan asks, voice low. Chris looks away. Ethan waits for him to be ready, the coffee scalding his throat. Yeah, Chris replies, a little raw. He died. Because of me, really. I haven't been with anyone since. I'm sorry. Chris nods, taking a second to compose himself before he adds, It was half a decade ago now. Ethan wonders what he was like, the guy that Chris was in love with. He senses it's still too painful to ask about, in a similar way to his own grief when he thought he'd lost Mia. After what happened last night, the way Chris had treated him like a china vase, with reverence and care, Ethan feels like he's allowed to ask this question without coming off as a raging homophobe. Do you have feelings for me? Chris laughs, reflexively and without humor. When Ethan says nothing, still expectant, he says, It doesn't matter. They're supposed to pretend it never happened, just a result of onset hypothermia and alcohol. Every day they work in tandem to bring the lodge closer to a livable state. Furnishings, electricity, windows, painting the walls and repairing the holes in the roof where crows are nesting. The days pass more quickly than they did when he was working alone. They use Chris's rented car to drive into the closest town and buy some supplies. All the way there, Chris plays rock classics, belting them out as if he's going on 20 instead of 50. Ethan doesn't sing, but he's almost tempted. When they reach the city and he finally has a signal, he texts Mia on impulse. Drove into Borja to get light fixtures, bulbs, etc. Chris keeping me company. Love and miss you both. He's distracted the whole day, guilty and confused by his own feelings. Chris acts as if everything is fine, which he both hates and appreciates. They buy more than they need, captivated by the market's trinkets. Chris buys him a new set of hex keys after he misplaced the old ones. He forces himself not to read into the gesture. They look at furniture like dining tables and sofas and beds. Ethan's getting a lot of it brought over from their home in Texas, but there won't be enough room for everything. He needs an office desk and chair, seeing as he'll mainly be managing his business from home, and they'll need an extra bed because Mia wanted her own bedroom. He'd vehemently objected at first, seeing it as a fatal sign that their marriage was on the rocks. Eventually, he realized she just needed her own space. Still, it hurt. He thinks he's trying too hard to go back in time, to before Mia went missing. They're different people now. Ethan imagines what the cabin will look like when it's finished, and it's easy to picture the interior, but difficult to conjure inhabitants. Just before they leave, his phone buzzes in his pocket. I love you too. I just want us to be together again. He reads it and he wants to cry, but no tears will come. He wants this limbo to end as much as he wants to stay in purgatory forever, halfway up the ladder, tucking himself back into Chris's warmth. Chris seems to have a sixth sense regarding Ethan's emotional state, so he passes him the aux cord and doesn't even complain about his pensioner's taste in music as they drive well into the night. Then again, they're exhausted and faced with the same sleeping arrangements. Chris stoically arranges himself on the floor, propped up by a comforter and a dusty pillow. By morning, they're a mess of blankets and limbs inextricably wrapped around each other that can't entirely be blamed on the cold. They don't talk about it, because that's the only way it can continue. Ethan hasn't tried to fix the heating for 3 weeks. One night, Chris circles his fingers around the thick line of scarring on Ethan's wrist. How is it? He asks. When they are this close, everything is whispered. Ethan makes a vague sound. He had been in for 2 surgeries as they tried to fix up his arm, and another 3 for his leg. That was only the half of it. He'd been in for testing for months as they tried to analyze the effects of the mold on his body. Everything was inconclusive. Just enough for them to sign off on Mia's pregnancy. They were worried they might have to amputate his leg, but he ended up lucky, just with a slight limp. I lost some fine motor skills, he replies. I'm right-handed, though. I guess it could be worse. Chris snickers. What? No, I just... Ethan twists around to frown at him, trying to make out his expression in the dark. Could have needed some help, that's all, Chris says innocently. Ethan turns to lay on his back again, thinking that one through. His face heats up a little because it's kind of the first innuendo Chris has made. He's normally pretty careful not to hint at those things. Ethan doesn't feel disgusted or creeped out. He feels like the tension between them is going to boil over, and this cowardly, bromance-passing arrangement that they have going on is not going to be enough. He's not going to be able to stop himself because he has to know what it's like. It's unsettling, knowing that you can't trust yourself to do the sensible thing, the right thing. He doesn't know where his head's at, but it's no excuse. Only if you want, Chris adds gently. That's the problem. He does want. And that gentleness has long since made him uncomfortable. That Chris is being so patient, as if he's holding out for something. Like this can never leave the cabin. Like Ethan isn't already a husband and father. I'm married, he rasps. He doesn't say, I'm straight, even though that's probably what he should have said. It will feel hollow after everything he's done. I know, Chris murmurs. The way he says it is so fucking bleak that Ethan swallows around a lump in his throat. There's nothing he can say to make it better, settling for a useless, I'm sorry. Chris shushes him, and he holds him close in such a way that Ethan feels safe for the first time since he left Dalvey. It's a novelty, being protected instead of the protector. He has so many responsibilities, and the pressure's on to provide for his family. Being able to let go like this is a gift. He wants to say thank you, but the most meaningful ways of expression have always eluded him. Time passes too quickly in the quiet, peaceful corner of the world. Chris is leaving today. I wish I could help you with the finishing touches, he says, looking up appraisingly at the cabin, its repaired roof and new windows. It looks great, though. We did good. Ethan leans forward, a stupid, impulsive brush of the lips over before it's begun. Chris cups his face. They don't kiss again. Ethan doesn't think he'd be able to let Chris go in this dangerous, please don't leave me alone kind of way. Chris smiles at him, somewhat sadly. I'll see you soon, all right? Take care of Evie. Ethan can't speak, so he just nods. That was surprisingly more wholesome than I expected. Wow. What did the comments say? Oh my god. God, this is gross.